Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man whose rebounding skills are so good, he makes Dennis Rodman look like he should play in the WNBA. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Uckelbach, a man who always bounces back.
That's good.
All right. I don't feel like you really meant that, but I don't really care. Also, welcome to our first one in 3 weeks. We don't have a guest. It feels
It's been a minute.
It has been a minute, and I miss our wives. I miss Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Those were both very fun episodes.
I love and enjoy our guests, but it's time to get back to business.
Word. Now, what I'm going to say, today's episode is on overcoming, and I'm very excited to share this one with you. I'll say this up front. Don't sleep on this episode. This is one of those episodes where I can't remember what inspired it, but I felt like I just kept bumping into this of like seeing people quit on things where you're like, like you're 100% made for this. And I feel like this is the kind of episode you could look at and be like, oh, overcoming, whatever. I'm telling you, I'll say this because I think it really is this big. One of the biggest takeaways that I've had from my time with Garrett and my transformation over the past 4 years has been, it started with the 100% Mission Success Guarantee podcast, because what I realized was that there was no magic formula. It was literally just, I'm not going to quit and I will be here every day and I'm willing to do whatever it takes and do the right things. So if I could instill one thing, if I could say, look, we're going to inject one thing into you that's going to change your entire life, it would be this. It would be, I'm going to turn you from a person that quits on things into an overcomer, because you have no idea how much it will unlock so many areas of your life.
It's a mindset, and this is one of those things, so much of this I've received from my father.
Right.
We were doing our purpose blueprint for Bellator Construction,
nice.
our construction company that me and my father are partners in, and we were talking about, the way that we talk about values, right? Or what are some of the, not, what are the moral things, but what are the unique values that you bring? What are the things that you value that add value?
Right.
And one of those qualities was resourcefulness, right?
Yeah,
which is so much of, we were talking about some of what we're going to talk about today. And a lot of that I learned from my father.
Yeah. And so we're going to,
for people who are entrepreneurs, for people who are business owners, if you don't have this quality, I promise you, it's going to be hard for you. You're going to struggle. If you own a business and you want to be successful, not just in the short term, but in the long term, you need what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And I would say, even if you're not a business owner, if you're just somebody that you're like, hey, if you're listening to this podcast, I feel like you're probably the type of person that wants more for your life. So guess what? Challenges, pain, difficulty, failure, it's coming for you. Like, you're going to have to overcome things regardless.
Congratulations.
No, it's just, it is. I think about it.
Yeah.
I got in the ice bath this morning and I was having one of those strong, like, oh man, you really don't want to do this. And like, I won't say exactly what went through my head, but
You don't feel that every single time?
Yeah. But this morning's was extra strong.
Okay.
Yeah, it was extra strong. And I was just like, no. And I was literally thinking, I was like, pain's coming for me. And if I'm going to like walk away from this, I'm giving myself a bad reference experience.
Yeah.
So I just jumped right in and sucked it up. And it was great. Okay. So the mindset of an overcomer. I want to give you an example of an overcomer that you've probably never heard of. So Maurice Hilleman is considered
never heard of that.
the greatest microbiologist to ever walk the earth. He's known for, and he's responsible for developing over 40 vaccines that to this day, he died in 2005. He was born in 1919 in Montana. His vaccines, they say, estimate save 8 million people a year still to this day.
Wow.
Which is incredible. So what I love about this, so you talk, like, think about this. The guy's born in 1919. Think about the kind of things that are killing people back then, right? And he grows up on this farm in Montana. His mom and his sister die due to complications at birth. So, he's got a lot of heartache. He actually credits a lot of his vaccine development because he was raising chickens on his uncle's farm, and chicken eggs were used to grow viruses for vaccines at the time. So he learned a lot about the animals and about the eggs and all those different things. So he develops all these vaccines. How's this for the mindset of an overcomer? He had such a knack for developing vaccines that his daughter fell ill in 1963. Here's how he responds. He swabs the back of her throat, takes the sample to his lab, and by 1967, he had a vaccine for the disease. Dude, I love that.
Wow.
I'd never heard of this guy, and as soon as I read this, I was like, dude, I got to tell this guy's story. So literally saving millions of lives, and he looked at diseases as an opportunity to help people. And he's altered the medical landscape for the better. He's considered the greatest microbiologist ever, and none of us have heard of him. And I guarantee you've probably had some of his vaccines because they're like measles, mumps, hepatitis A, B, chickenpox. Like, these are this is things that his team did. Him and his team developed 8 of those. So it's just 8 of the 14 vaccines that are routinely recommended were developed by him and his team. Just incredible. And we've never heard of him. But like that's an overcomer. Like, oh, you're sick? Oh man, what are we gonna do? Well, I'm gonna swab the back of your throat and go solve it.
He believed that there was a way to fix it.
Yeah, and not only
He
that,
believed there was a cure.
yeah, and he paid the price to do it. I love that story. So here's the not overcomer saying, and we hear it all the time, and it bothers me.
This is the opposite of an
This is
overcomer.
the opposite of an overcomer. It is what it is. I've said it on this podcast before that I hate that saying, and like I feel like the more I go on, the more
my
it bothers
daughter
me.
got polio. It is what it is.
But that it's basically there's nothing I can do. We just have to give up and accept it. There's even I Googled it is what it is just to see what was out there. There's pop songs and stuff now about like literally like, oh, my car sucks and my job isn't very good, but it's okay. It is what it is. Like there's some I don't remember her name, but she's some pop singer that wrote this, and then apparently there's rappers that have done it as well. So there's a little bit of pop culture that you don't need in your day. But yeah, awesome. So the reason we were talking about that everyone needs this. People quit all the time. And not because I think one of the things that you said that stuck with me is people quit not at the point of failure, but at the point of inconvenience.
Yeah.
Right. And what's inconvenient for a lot of people? I don't really know how to do this. Even though they have experiences of people who have done what they're trying to do.
People's quit is the end of the escalator.
Right.
The stairs stop
right.
taking me up.
Yeah.
Right. It's like when Buddy the Elf gets on the escalator and he gets to the top, like, what do I do now? That's most people in life, right? Like it stopped going automatically. Well, I guess that's the end of the road.
By the way, dude, great movie reference there, right? Festive reference from Garrett Unkelbach. Not something I saw coming. Great job. Well, an overcomer, the opposite of that is an overcomer says, I can, I just don't know how. Like they're ready to navigate.
It's one of the great qualities I learned from my father. I watched my dad deal with every problem in his life and be like, well, we're going to come up with an answer to this. I don't know what it is yet, but there's going to be one.
Yeah. It's that belief that there's so that's one of the prerequisites, right? Is that you have to believe there's a solution. I think you said it a few weeks ago, and that probably sparked some of this episode, was that you said you watched your dad always believe that there was a solution and he would be in a tight pinch. And it wasn't like, oh, let's freak out. It was like, I just got to find the solution.
Every problem has a solution. So you're believing that it's there. I don't know what it is, but it's there somewhere and I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I was talking to you about even the way that we've developed some of the podcasts on here. Sometimes Nick asks me a question and I know that wisdom has an answer to it.
Yes.
I may not necessarily know what it is at the moment, but I know that wisdom has an answer to it. It's believing that there's a solution. It's believing that there's an answer. And you'll never find it if you don't believe that there is.
Yeah, funny side note, I feel like Garrett is kind of like my real life chat GPT because when we were first starting this podcast, he was like, things that help me be my best, prompts for Garrett's brain. That's literally how he said it to me. And I remember I was very amused at how he phrased that. But I literally prompt Garrett's brain all the time for all the programs we do and all the stuff, and it's
so whatever challenge or issue you're facing in your life right now, if you've already decided that there's no solution to it, well, then you should just quit.
But I don't think people will say, if you said, do you think there's a solution to this problem? I think every person would say yes. And so I think that it's multiple beliefs. It's not just that there's a solution. It's that you can actually execute the solution or find the way to get it. And I think people are conditioned to quit, like you said, at the point of inconvenience. And so the overcomer's belief is there's a solution. Like we said, I just don't know how.
Well, it's going back to one of the lessons I learned in this. It's Henry Ford's, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And you have two responses to that, right? Some people will say, well, but what if? What if you're wrong?
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you're focused on. And so that's what you're going to get. But there's other people who say, well, what if I'm right?
Yeah.
What if I believe and I'm right?
Yeah.
And they see what's possible. And when you focus, it's the point of this podcast. When you focus on what's possible, everything changes for you. When you focus on what could go wrong, you're going to head in that direction.
Yeah. And the second thing for the prereqs that we said, so the belief is the first one, that you have to believe that there's a solution, but you also have to have an identity that's not tied to outcomes, right? And what we're saying is,
go back and listen to the identity podcast. We're not going to break that down right now.
Yeah, what we're saying is you're going to fail, so you better not have your identity tied to it,
right? Because think about it. Okay, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Well, what if I do think I can, and then it didn't work out? Is it wrong? Right? Well, I guess that's just stupid. And that, I was an idiot for believing that, and everything, the rest of my life is just pessimism.
Right.
Right. No, it's understanding that just because I didn't get it this time doesn't mean I won't get it the next time.
Yeah.
Being an overcomer is not a tool set. Being an overcomer is an identity. So that means that sometimes you're going to fail, But, you know, even when you fail, you say, that's okay. I'm going to get it the next time, right? And we've talked about beliefs in this way, right? We use as an example for belief. Some people believe they're lucky. Some people believe they're unlucky. Right. It's not so much about the facts, but it's much more about the story that you tell in relation to it. For example, if I don't win something, if I lose at a raffle, if I lose at something that most people would consider luck related, if I lose, I'm like, that's weird.
Right.
Because I normally,
you're about to say it.
Because I normally win.
Yeah, and you really believe that, and you recently exercised that belief in Vegas very well.
I win at things all the time, right? I expect to win. And when I lose, I say that's weird, right? Because that's what I see and that's what I believe in my life. This isn't so much about manifesting. It's really more so the power of negativity or the power of positivity.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm looking at the ground, right, I'm not going to go up. Right? But only when I start to look up, when I begin to see what's possible, can I move in that direction. This is a principle of life. Look where you want to go. When you drive a car, if you look into the ditch, you're going to drive into the ditch.
Yes.
Right? And so with your life, if you're looking into the ditch, you're going to steer your life into the ditch.
Yeah. I wanted to give you like an air horn whenever you said that overcoming is not a tool set, it's an identity. That is such a crucial piece of this. The last prereq, and I just want to make sure we have it in there, is like you need to have an endurance timeline. You cannot be a quick fix person and be an overcomer. And I think that's a lot of why people quit is because they don't have endurance and they're tied to like a certain outcome.
You and I were talking about this today with one of the groups that we spend time with around faith, because faith is an aspect of endurance. And something that you need to, like, being an overcomer doesn't mean, like, a lot of people can be an overcomer for 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
But can you be an overcomer for 5 years? Can you be an overcomer for, 15 years, for 25 years? And you and I were talking about Matthew 14, the story of Peter, right? Many people know this story when Peter walks on water. Well, basically he says, Lord, tell me to come to you and I'll come to you. What great faith Peter had. That's what you would think. Like Peter's he's seeing Jesus walk on water for the first time. Mm-hmm. And then like he takes a leap of faith and says, if you tell me to do it, I'll come out there and meet you. And you'd think like, man, what great faith Peter has. And so he gets out there and begins to walk. And as soon as it says that Peter sees the wind and the waves and begins to doubt, and he says, Lord, help me. Right? And so Jesus reaches out his hand and says, why did you doubt? Right? Oh, you of little faith.
Right.
And here's what you need to catch from that, because you can think like, man, it seems like Peter had a lot of faith. All the other disciples were in the boat. None of them were saying I could do that, right? It seems like Peter had a lot of faith. But the reason that Jesus said Peter had little faith in that moment, see faith this way. Don't see faith as quantity, see faith as duration. Peter had faith for 30 seconds. He had a lot of faith, but he had it for 30 seconds. He started to walk. He's like, oh no, what's going to happen? Right? See faith as through years and years of your life. Not can I have just faith for a moment, but you've got to have faith for the long term.
Right. And what's amazing about that is that you have a measure of faith that's God-given, and it's up to you to exercise. What does that mean? Stir it up, strengthen it, right? Yeah. And that's part of the endurance. So going back to
you don't measure endurance in seconds,
right, dude? Did you see how fast I was running for that like first 30? It was awesome. but yeah, I mean, going back to what you said about overcoming not being a tool set but an identity. This is like the crux of the matter. What you said, oh, it's weird I didn't win. What does that say? God made you to win both here and in eternity. And you can immediately, I'm thinking actually of a reel that David Goggins posted recently. I was telling Garrett about it beforehand because you didn't see it. David Goggins posted this reel about, it was from a Christian kid, follower of Jesus, like very strong faith. And he likes to work out. And he said, hey guys, I've just found out that I'm developing cancer in my body for the 3rd time. And he's like, but you don't even understand. He's like, I've already won. And he gives this example, and I think it's such an analogy because you could sit there and go, okay, God made me to win. Well, if you die from cancer, what do you make of that? Well, what does that look like? And I don't, this kid's, he's on the recovery path as far as I know. But like, what does that look like? It doesn't mean that you have to go out with a whimper and go out with like, well, I guess it just wasn't meant. You can go out with being the most triumphant example of what you believe in and be unchanged. That to me would be winning in that scenario. And then you also get to go spend an eternity with Jesus. Like you won here and in eternity. And what this kid said in this video, who's actually going through this, he said, this is like, you record the game of your favorite football team and someone accidentally tells you the score and you find out that your team won and you're like, oh, great. Well, you decide to watch it anyways. And as you're watching it, your team starts off playing horribly and they're down by like 4 touchdowns in the second quarter. But instead of turning it off and being like, oh man, this is terrible, you're like, no, I know they're going to win because I already know the score. And that was the victory he was talking about having in life. How would you approach things if you really believed that God made you to win, both here and in eternity? The game is rigged. And if you actually believe that the outcome was set for you to be victorious, I think that you would behave and you would stop quitting on things in a whole different way. And that's why I think that this is so crucial, what you said about it being an identity. So, G, we mentioned these things earlier, and I want you as an overcomer to share how you deal with these things and some of the keys.
So just some examples of areas that you need to be an overcomer. This probably wouldn't be people's first suggestion or first thought that pops into their mind.
Right.
But first area that you need to be an overcomer is in criticism.
Right.
Okay. Overcoming criticism does not mean be defensive.
Right.
Right. When someone starts telling you, like, here's all the ways that you can be better, when you give excuses.
Right.
Right. There was a situation this past year where I was helping you and your leadership around a situation where you had a very valid excuse. There was somebody that was being, that was struggling. And my challenge to you was like, hey, don't let this be an area where you can't lead.
Right.
You didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
But win in this area anyways. And in that same way, when criticism is given to you, right, you can either defend it, make excuses, not my fault, not my problem.
Right.
You've determined I'm already as good as I need to be.
Right.
Right. Or when you take criticism on, you're like, you know what? You're right. I can be better in that area. That's an area I can still improve. I'm not perfect in that yet. Right. Because what an overcomer says I can be better.
Yeah.
And so this is God gives grace to the humble, right? Grace is a gift. Grace is our opportunity for freedom. God resists the proud. And the key to understanding, overcoming, and criticism is humility. When you have humility and understanding, I'm not great yet. I'm not perfect yet. I can grow, right? There's things that I need to still get right. When you have humility, that's what opens the door and criticism for you to be an overcomer.
Yeah, it's so good.
Right? Instead of saying, you're wrong, with the right response of an overcomer is, you know what? I don't want to receive that criticism again. So let me get better.
Yeah.
Let me fix that thing, and then we won't have to have this conversation again.
Yeah, I don't mean to keep harping on identity, but I'm just, the more you're founded in God, I think the more you'll find that you become humble, not just because you realize how much you pale in significance to him, but you don't need other people's affirmation.
That's right.
And that is a wonderful place to live. When someone can say something to you and they're trying to hurt you, and you can go, you know what, I think you got a point there. Oh, that's different. Because most people would be like, oh, this person, screw you. I can't believe. No, I already know who I am. So even if you're trying to hurt me, it's like, whatever. But like, if the shoe fits, like your dad said, right? Wear it.
That's right.
Good. Second thing.
Second area, and this is a little bit more common for areas that you need to overcome, is obstacles. There's going to be things that get in your way. And, the gut response or the initial response for a lot of people is, why is this happening to me?
Right.
Why is this obstacle here? Well, I thought we were going to go this way, but there's a giant boulder in the road, so I guess we're not supposed to go this way.
Let's just turn around.
Yeah, and that is the common response. The right response to obstacles in your path, certainly if you've already determined what your path should be, is like, what do I got to do to get around this? In the SEAL teams, it was find a way or make one.
Yeah.
Right? There's a saying or a joke about the different forces at development group that, one's going to go over the mountain, one's going to go through the mountain, one's going to go around the mountain, another one's going to blow up the mountain. Right. Right. There's so many different ways to solve your problem. And so when you get obstacles, that's where you've got to be resourceful. Yeah. Resourceful is saying, is looking back and saying, I don't have everything, but what do I have? Yes. What is in my hand? What is my current problem? And what are some different ways that I could solve this? This is when we've talked about this before as it relates to negativity, but a helpful exercise for being resourceful is when you look at a problem that, it's like, man, I don't know what to do with this. Here's like a fun exercise. This is like a whiteboard classroom exercise. What are all the stupidest ways to solve this problem? Yes. What are all the ways that I couldn't solve this problem? Because when you start talking about all the ways that it doesn't work, then you'll start to realize, well, here's the ways that it can. And it's one of the keys that we talked about in this podcast. It's in the intro. If I had to, what would it take? Right. And so impossible for most people, obstacles for most people. It's not that you can't do it. They're like, well, man, that would just hurt. That would be expensive. That would take. It's not that it's impossible. I would just take a long time.
Right.
Right. So when you'll actually call it what it is, that's when you can start to reframe it a little bit. Okay, well, it's not that we don't want to do this. It would just take like 1,000 hours to do that. And that's probably not a good solution. Well, is there a way that we could do it in 100 hours?
Yeah.
What's the thing that's actually taking so long? And when you'll frame the problem for what it really is, then it becomes easier to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And it's the understanding of all complicated problems are just a bunch of simple problems put together.
Yeah, very good.
My easy analogy for it is when you look at that, in that drawer in your house with all the junk in it, and there's like a rat's nest of cables in there. If you look at like, any, 20, 15, a bunch of cables all together, you look at it, you're like, you don't know how to pull it apart. But just find the easiest cable to pull out of it, and now you have changed the problem. And it's not about how do I untangle this thing. It's what's one thing I can do to change the problem.
Yeah.
Right. All complicated problems, just a bunch of simple problems put together. And so resourcefulness is the key to overcoming obstacles.
Yeah. Another thing that will help you is having equanimity, because I think one of the worst things you could do is to hope that problems don't ever come your way.
Yeah.
And I think when you not only, it's not, some people want problems because they look at them as opportunities for growth. And I don't know that I'm necessarily there right now, but when problems happen now,
Don't need any more. I got plenty.
yeah, but when they come, I'm just like, okay, like,
Yeah.
because that's what we're signed up for as people who want to grow, as people.
Right.
That's what God's made us for, and especially if you're a business owner, like you're there to solve problems. So
Exactly.
like, part of it is you have to expect that they're going to come your way, and guess what? It probably won't be the ones that you pick all the time. Like, well, I hired this guy to do this job. Yeah, well, you also didn't see that you hired everything that comes with them, and that's part of the joys. But that's the next problem to solve. All right.
So last thing, we talked about criticism. We talked about obstacles. Let's talk about challenges, right? Challenges are a little bit different than obstacles. What an obstacle is, it's not necessarily related to you, but the path has changed.
Right.
We inherited a problem we didn't see coming.
Yeah.
A challenge can be a little bit more personal. Like a challenge is like an attack against you. And what a challenge says to you, when you get challenged, a challenge says that you're not good enough, right? Are you good enough to take me on? That's what a challenge says, right? An obstacle is just what an obstacle is. And you can either come up with a way to get around it. It's not personal to you. Challenges are a lot more personal. And so the challenge says, are you good enough? Do you have what it takes? And where people will back up from the challenge is because, like, people don't want to take on a challenge is because they think, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't have what it takes. And because it becomes personal, they think that a challenge might define them, right? You've got to decide that you want to be someone like, hey, no, I'm not afraid of a challenge. I'll step up to this. And let me tell you what my superpower is in the challenge. Even if I fail, you can't tell me who I am.
Right.
Right. Where you become afraid of a challenge, where you become afraid of difficulties in your life is, well, who will I be if I fail at this?
Yeah.
Right? I'll know who I am if I fail, and I'll know who I am if I win. So the secret to the challenge part of overcoming, right? This is one of the things you're going to face in being an overcomer. The secret to challenges is resilience. Resilience is the scientific definition of resiliency is how quickly does an object return to its form.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you like a cardboard box is the opposite of resilient.
Yeah.
You kick a cardboard box and it's deformed.
Right.
Right. Like a rubber bouncy ball has great resilience.
Yeah.
You throw it at the ground super fast and it, changes shape for a microsecond and then quickly returns to its form. And that's what creates its springiness. Right. And so that's what resilience is. And you've got to have a type of an identity, a resilience that comes from your identity, which is like, even if I get destroyed for a moment, I'm going to quickly bounce back to who I am. And
Shout out to my intro.
And that's what allows you to go work through any challenges, right? Even if I fail, this doesn't define who I am. So it gives you a courage in facing things that you're not 100% sure you're going to succeed at.
Yeah, which, I mean, who doesn't want that? I feel like we just keep going back to identity. So
You're not going to be very strong, and you're not going to be much of an overcomer if you, it's literally just kind of takes out the meaning of overcomer if the only things you overcome are the things you knew you could.
Right. Yeah, that's not overcoming. That's called affirming yourself.
Yeah.
Now, you said that one of the reasons people fail is because they're trying to overcome the wrong thing. And I thought that was really interesting because that, we're talking about it as an identity. We're talking about some of the prereqs that you need. I want to get into some common examples because criticism, obstacles, and challenges there's a lot of things that will fall into that. And I think that's helpful for people. But I want to give some very common examples of some of those so that we can break them down. So let's, you ready to dive in there, Jay?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is one that you'll hear a lot. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to basically give what the problem is, and then I'm going to tell you what the wrong thing is. and you can, and then G's going to break it down for us. So the first one that we're going to look at is one that you've probably all experienced before. So or you can relate to. My job isn't my passion. How many people out there have felt that? And I can tell you that a lot of people have felt that. And the natural reaction is like, well, you just haven't found your passion yet. So clearly, like, mail it in on the job that you're doing or quit and just go find your passion, because that's what you really need to do.
Yeah, sometimes people think that, overcoming in that situation is like, well, the obstacle is I don't really enjoy this.
Right.
Right. So I guess I should just, I should come up with something else to do. I should go in a different direction.
Right.
And really, like, okay, this is one of those things, like I said, you got to define what the problem actually is.
Yes, very good.
Right. Passion is motivation, right? Passion is similar to motivation. I wouldn't say they're quite the same, but it's a feeling about what you're doing. And feelings are not bad. Feelings are not inherently good. Feelings are information for us. I don't need to follow all of my feelings. I don't need to ignore all of my feelings. Feelings are something, they're just information that I have to help me. And so what if, like, in my life, I was just following my feelings around? What if I only did the things that I was motivated to do?
Yeah, seriously.
That would be the same as only doing the things that I'm passionate about. My parents, like, gave me a real hard time when I was a teenager, because it was like, you only do the stuff that you're passionate about.
Right.
And they didn't say that in a positive way. Right. What they were encouraging me and challenging me on is like, you need to learn how to do the things that you're not passionate about.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, that I'll just make like a really simple example. Maybe you're not passionate about going to the gym. Right. I never saw myself as an athlete.
Right.
Well, you know what? Like, if you say I'm not going to do it because I'm not passionate about it, you're going to be really unhealthy. Right. And so I would just say that as it relates to your job, you've got to have a growth mindset and say, you know what? I'm going to find a way. I'm going to make one. I'm going to look at this challenge. I'm going to look at this obstacle and decide that I can maybe change my passions. Right. Because what's at the core of an overcomer, again, this is someone who says, I don't know how, but I know that I can. Right. Maybe you don't know how to be passionate about your work today, but maybe you could become passionate. This is a growth mindset. A growth mindset is if you've read Carol Dweck's book Mindset, a growth mindset is an understanding that the situation, the problem can change.
Yes.
Right? Or really that you can change. Right? Math is math, but you can get better at math. Right? That's Carol Dweck's, that's the forum that she uses for her book Mindset is around math. Kids who believe they can get better at math do great. Even when they're objectively poor at math, if you help them believe that they can become good at math, they get better at math. In kids who objectively are very good at math, if you tell them that they're bad at math and that there's nothing they can do to fix it, they get worse. Right? And so this is what growth mindset is. And so you've got to have a growth mindset maybe around your passion and your interests. Like, hey, you know what? If I just practice this and I pretend like I like this, maybe I can develop some passion in it. Of course, it's not going to be as natural as some other passion that you have. But this is just an example. And this isn't a one size fits all prescription for everybody. Some people, what you're doing today isn't what you're going to be doing for forever.
Right.
But for some, if you think the answer to your work life is, well, I'm just not passionate about that. There was a lot of things in the SEAL teams I wasn't passionate about.
Right.
Right. But I had to learn to get passionate about it. Right. I really like jumping out of planes. I didn't really like all the attention to detail of rigging. I didn't really enjoy packing a parachute, right? But that's just part of the equation, right? So just understand that you can develop interest. That really what you need to be an overcomer on is overcome yourself, overcome your lack of interest in something instead of just saying, well, I don't like this. My feelings aren't aligned, so I'll just quit and go a different direction.
Yeah, I think that the application of that thought process towards your health, towards something where it's like you will 100% bump into the consequence of that, really sheds light on that thought process. Because I don't think a lot of people would see it that way. They're like, no, you're supposed to be passionate about what you do. Because you look at like Steve Jobs and all these great American examples, and you're like, they just love their work. And if you work a job you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's where you'll get to, in your maturity in life. But so much of it is about your development before you get there. I was sharing this with somebody recently. Look at Joseph's story.
Yeah.
You know what Joseph was passionate about? Being a leader.
Right.
And you know what he got? To be a slave.
Yeah.
How passionate was Joseph about being a slave? You would think he probably wasn't very passionate, but Scripture says otherwise.
Yeah.
It says that he was so excellent that Potiphar worried for nothing. It was never his dream to be a slave. I don't think it's anybody's dream, but he was still great at it. He said, this is where I'm at. This is what I have. This is what's in my hand. So I'm going to be great here. And maybe that'll get me on to what I'm passionate about.
Very
right.
good.
If you want to get to working in your passions, it's through a series of leveling up. It's not through a series of quitting.
Very good. All right. Here's another example that I think, unfortunately, number of people will be able to relate to. My finances are beyond saving. Like I make this much is outgoing. We've got this debt. Like I just need to make this go away. Do we need to declare bankruptcy or
I declare bankruptcy.
Well, no, yeah, no, but like legitimately,
I declared it.
Did you? Right now?
Making a joke of The Office.
Oh, we need to give you like some sort of bell so I know when you're joking. Anyways,
Have you not seen that episode of The Office?
I'm not. This is odd that you know an Office episode that I don't.
Yeah, he's running around like he's having issues with his finances, and he's like, "I declare bankruptcy." Like, well, that's not how it works. It's like, no, I declared it.
Oh, right. Yeah, that sounds like a Michael Scott thing to do. But that is the thing. Is it's like, well, how do I make this go away as fast as possible? And I've been in this situation, and you're sat there and you're just daydreaming of like, how can I get a windfall of cash so that this can just go away and I don't have to be in this situation? That's all you want when you're in that situation.
Right, and that's what you've backed yourself into a corner of the only solution for me is getting a windfall of cash. Okay, that's not happening. Get a raise. Guess I'm not good enough for that. You've eliminated all these problems, and what you've taken off the table is really the one thing that you need to do to overcome. Right there was this time that I was in. I was on a training mission in the military, and I was the comms guy. And I had tried every single thing that the book said to do to get my radio to work, and it wasn't working. And you know what the last thing left for me to do was? Run up the side of a mountain. It was the last option I had, get to high ground. And it was the last thing I wanted to do.
Right.
And I could have said, hey, Chief, sorry, tried everything.
Right.
Right. And we would have had to abort this mission. I said, well, my only option left is I have to climb this mountain. And shocker, it worked. My radio worked when I got up there because radios operate through line of sight. But I could have said, you know what? I tried everything the book said. So, it was not a short hike. It wasn't like a couple 100 meters. I had to go like 800 meters up. I literally was like, guys, I'll be back in 45 minutes.
Right. And you take somebody with you as well because you were on a mission. I remember you telling me this story. Yeah.
So in that situation, I was like, man, this is the right answer is the most painful answer.
Right.
And as it relates to the finances, a lot of people, it's like, man, well, God forbid I have to cut my expenses or change my lifestyle.
Right.
Right. Sometimes that's what you need to do to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
And so being a part of, in this situation, part of being an overcomer is realizing that sometimes it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
And again, that's where it's like, it's impossible. It's not impossible. It's just going to hurt.
Yeah. If you had to, what would it take?
Exactly.
And it's funny because as we were saying, I was the one who came up with the idea to talk about the finances, and I'm actually flashing back to when I was in that situation. When you're in that situation, you start thinking of outrageous things to do. Like, I could sell my car and just ride a motorcycle, or we could sell the house and then we'd be different. It's like, you still have to live somewhere. Like, it's not like you just sell your house and you go back to
down by the river.
Yeah, that's an option. Well, you know what? Maybe in this scenario that would be the option. But like, how realistic is it that you're not going to regret that decision? 2 weeks into it, but that's the kind of extreme thinking because all you want, you just get fixated on the pain of it, and you just want it to go away.
But this would require me to face my childish behavior. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to do that at all. I want to act out irrationally. While we're referencing, that's a deep cut for a movie. If anybody knows that one, that's the Santa Claus.
The Santa Claus.
There you go. All right,
Papa Noel.
Yeah, very good. Man, you're all over the Christmas movies, man. You're feeling very festive. I know your wife decorated November 1, so you've been in it for like a couple weeks now. So here's the last one, and you'll hear this one. Well, my partner's just like very insert whatever complaint there, and they get that from their mother. That's just how they grew up. And hey, it is what it is, right? Right. That's the thing. And so here's the wrong thing is to start thinking, well, maybe I married the wrong person, man. And like that is the
you should just quit.
Right. That's the logical thought process. Maybe we just shouldn't got together. We were different when we met, right? And things change. You grow apart. That's like a logical thought process. You're solving the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. You're thinking that, I could just, here's the right way for me to fix this problem. I should run from it.
Right.
That's rarely going to be the right case. There's only one thing that I'm thinking of, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but there's only one thing that Scripture says to run from, and that's sexual immorality.
Right. It says flee. Right?
Yeah. Other than that, I'm not thinking of any things in Scripture that it says run from these things.
Yeah.
The right situation and how to be an overcomer this is just an example of it, right? We're not just jumping on this situation. This situation is an example of how to be an overcomer.
It's a common one.
And Ephesians 5 really is the answer here.
Yeah.
Right? It says, Women should submit to their husbands. Men should love their wives the way Christ loved the church.
Right.
Right. And Christ is the greatest example of an overcomer. What did Christ do? Christ said, you know what? I didn't screw this up. You guys did, but I'll fix it. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. That's literally the mindset of an overcomer. God, managing the Israelites says like, okay, I'll continue to speak to you. I'll give you leaders. I'll give you law. I'll give you all of these things trying to help you. Again, I didn't screw it up. I'm just trying to restore our relationship, right? In this context, right, within a marriage or a relationship, you're trying to fix, you're trying to restore the relationship. Well, I tried this, that's not working. I tried this, that's not working. Tried this, that's not working. Well, I guess here's the only thing left. I'm going to have to make some sort of personal sacrifice.
Yeah.
Again, Christ said, I'll do whatever it takes to make it work. And it says, this is how a man should love his wife. It's one of the greatest examples in Scripture of how to be an overcomer.
Yeah,
I didn't break it, but I'll fix it, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, how few people would get married if they actually had that? Like, hey, guess what? Once you do this, you have to make it work no matter what.
You mean I might have to give up some things that I like?
Yeah.
You mean I might have to change my behavior? This is it's a wrong understanding of God if you think God's desire for you is just to make you happy. Following God will lead to a life of happiness, but just look at the way that God worked with his people, right? I mean, when God established the Israelites, what did he have them do? He had them circumcise themselves, right? If you understand what that is, it's not comfortable. It's like, you want me to do what?
Yeah, dude, Abram did it when he was like, what, 80 or something like that?
Yeah, you want me to do this procedure on myself in a very sensitive area that's going to hurt a lot, and it's just because you want me to be set apart? Understand, this is the way that God works with the people that he loves.
Yeah.
I'm going to change you. I'm going to call you to be different. And so part of following God is understanding God's ways are higher than my ways. This isn't exactly what I would want to do, but I'm going to trust you. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this work. And really the secret sauce in being an overcomer, when you're being an overcomer and following God's ways, is right. You know what? Even at the end of this, it doesn't seem like it, but I know it's going to be better than what my current situation is. Yeah. It's like Abraham said, well, I guess God's going to bring Isaac back from the dead because right now this plan sucks.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Well, like I said, I wanted to share this with everybody because I think it's one you could easily sleep on. And I've watched you and I've experienced it myself now in my own life over and over again when you come up to these. Because guess what? Are you going to face criticism, obstacles, and challenges? 100%. We gave you 3 practical examples of obstacles and different challenges that you might face. For example, the finances is a failure, and there's all these different things that we showed you. You're going to face these things. And when you have this mindset and this belief and this identity that, hey, this is what I'm engineered for, and even if I made this mess, I can go clean it up, and there's a solution, it's something subtle, but it makes all the difference.
Remember this thought process on quitting and not looking at your past, but looking at your future. If you look at your future and say, like a current situation, your present or your future, and it's like, well, I'm going to quit on this, you're determining that you would quit on anything as difficult as that or more difficult than that in the future. And if you want greatness for your life, you need to look at every challenge that God sends your way and say, well, this looks like more weight than I've ever picked up before, but I guess I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to pick up this weight, and I know God's going to do it to me again, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm going to grow on from this situation, and it'll take me to the next place where I can continue to grow more and more. Being an overcomer is just having the mindset, it's having the thought process that says I can grow through this situation and I'm going to get to greatness on the other side of it, instead of being someone who's like, well, man, this is outside my comfort zone. Like Nick said, that's the place that a lot of people quit, is when it becomes uncomfortable. Be someone who's okay with being uncomfortable and know that there's greatness on the other side of you being an overcomer.